Hi, I'm Lauren Bregetzer, an Ableton certified trainer and an associate professor at the University of Colorado, Denver. I'm going to demonstrate a couple of the MIDI generative tools, Seed and Shape, and show how you can incorporate those to create interesting rhythms, melodies, and harmonies with minimal music theory. With Seed, I'll demonstrate how to incorporate that with the long-standing slice to MIDI function to create interesting chopped up beats, as well as chopped up melody tracks. Next, I'll show you the Stack MIDI generator. With this tool, I'll show you how you can create interesting harmonies to put on top of these chopped up melodies using only your ear and the scale awareness function. It will culminate in a demonstration to create an interesting piece like this from scratch, so make sure you stay all the way through the video. Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate the slice to MIDI function from this drum loop here. So you need to use an audio track to use a slice function. So I'm going to right click on here, and I'm going to drop down to slice to new MIDI track. When I select that, I have two different options to choose from, or two different settings to adjust. I have transient, warp marker, and also single selections of bar, half note, all the way up to 32nd note. So what this is going to do is it's going to chop up the beat according to either like 16th notes, half notes, quarter notes, whatever you want. And if I want to choose transient, which is one I use probably most of the time, it'll actually chop up the beat at all the transient markers. So you see the transient markers of this drum loop here, they're not even. They're not evenly spaced like 16th notes would be. So it's going to chop them every time there's a transient. A transient is where there's a loud signal coming up in a sharp fashion, like a drum beep or something like that. So I'll show you what each of those looks like. If I choose 16th note, it'll tell me how many slices it's going to be. This is a 16-beat long loop, and it's going to create 64 slices, which mathematically makes sense. So I hit OK. It's going to create a MIDI track with a bunch of MIDI notes separated out 1/16th note apart. If I go to choose transients instead, slice new MIDI track, I'm going to choose transients. It's not going to be evenly spaced because these transient markers aren't evenly spaced. So I hit OK. It's going to look kind of similar, but you can see the longer held notes where there aren't any transients are just a single MIDI note. So what this does is it actually takes this, chops it up, and I can actually go look at that. I can actually hit Shift Tab and just jump to this, and it created a drum rack. So in this drum rack are individual slices. This one has 58. Because that's how many slices the transients were, and it's chopped them up. So I have kick drum, just a little bit of noise, a little hi-hat, another kind of noise, snare drum there. And so these are all individual. If I double click on one, I can see that this is actually just the slice of that loop, and each one is its own little slice of that single sample. So it's actually analyzed that audio clip and sliced it up and created a bunch of little simplers. With this preset, it created a bunch of little simplers with each slice there. So I can actually play it on a MIDI keyboard if I wanted to, or a Ableton Push if you have one, and I can chop it up that way. So that's what slice to MIDI track does. And what I can do now is I'm actually going to delete this, and I'm going to go back to 16th notes, select a new MIDI track. And one thing I will show you is these slicing presets on the bottom. These are different drum rack settings. So the first two, the built-in and the built-in zero velocity, those will use simplers. And the rest of them use samplers, which have more features, so it has more interesting characters. You can play with these. They're all kind of cool. This top one, this says LB slicing pitch, that's a preset I made. If you want to learn how to make your own slicing preset, I suggest you go check out this video that I'm showing you here on the screen. Just go to YouTube and check out this video. It's very easy and informative, and you can check that out. What I'm going to do is then switch back to 16th notes, hit OK, and now I'm going to turn this track off and launch this clip, and you'll hear it play that same beat. The original beat sounds like this. And the sliced up version sounds like this. But rather than being one continuous audio track, it's playing MIDI notes, triggering each of those slices. Now, the cool thing about this is I can actually kind of chop up and mangle that beat. If I hit, I'm going to just select all these. Well, I'm going to drop this clip down, both these clips apparently, and I'm going to select them all, Command A, delete them all, and I can actually use my pencil tool if I'm 16th notes, and I can just draw in a different version of that beat. I'm going to launch that clip here. I can go from top to bottom. I can just draw around. That's a really cool way to slice up and chop up your beat. So that's how you use that. Now, one cool thing that you can do, if I'm going to go back to the original one, up top here. So that's an overview of the slice to MIDI function in Ableton Live. Now I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on how the shape generator function works. So here I have the shape function. If you want to see where they are, just click on the farthest right tab there, and you'll see what looks almost like a step sequencer, and it's kind of like that. Now, one thing I'm going to point out is this can use the scale awareness function. So by default, we have the scale awareness set to C major, and that's fine for this demonstration. And I can actually have this clip make sure it's on C major with this one selected, turned on. And you can see when I turn it off and on, the purple highlights will show up. Now, if I click on the scale button, I'll only see the notes in that C major scale. So what this does is this generates MIDI notes across that shape. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that there's also a range that you can adjust. So I can adjust this down to really low. I can set the rate. This is set to grid. Maybe I want to set this to 2 bars. I'm going to change my length to 2 bars. And then I can just click this regenerate button on the right. I'll make it fill that space as long as those notes are selected. When I hit play, let's hear what it sounds like. This is just the up preset. Which is pretty cool. Now, this isn't specifically like an arpeggiator, although you can kind of use it kind of as such, because you don't have any control over the duration of this sequence. There's a better tool for adjusting that over here in the arpeggiate section in the modifiers. But when I go to the generator section, what I'm looking to do is doing something that can trigger those clips, like those slices that we saw in that slice to MIDI. So I can actually kind of draw this in. And the nice thing is it all stays within that sort of key of C. You could draw it in, you can use flat. There's a bunch of different presets, up, down, these bounce up, these arc ups. These are probably my favorite ones. If I want to hear this, and I can adjust things in real time. So a couple other functions here is the jitter. And what the jitter is it adds randomness to the note above and below it. So if I increase that jitter, you can see those notes starting to change. So now it's not exactly that arc that was there. And the density controls how many notes I hear. So you can create some interesting melodies with this. And then there's the tie function. The tie will make notes that can be longer than each, 16th note. So here I'm going to do increase the tie. You can see some notes are longer than others, and there's still gaps because I have the density turned down. And I'm going to apply this to a chopped up musical phrase here in a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to demonstrate the stacks MIDI generator in Ableton Live. So I still have that same grand piano. I'm going to double click in here to create a MIDI clip. I'm going to make it 4 bars long. Let's drag this up to 4. I got a 4 bar long MIDI clip. And I'm going to change my generator to stacks. Now when I look at this, I can see this geometric shape here, and it changes depending on what I select here as far as my root goes. I'm going to undo on that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use to generate a chord progression. So this is another scale awareness function. So make sure this is selected to a key that you want and that the scale is selected here. And what I'm going to do is choose one. So I'm going to go up here. I'm in the key of C. Let's start with a C. A C. Let's go to C3. Use my arrow keys. And again, this follows diatonically into the key of C major. So no matter what I do, it's all going to be notes in that scale of C major. So when I have one stack here, this is when I launch the clip. This is a standard C triad, and I can adjust the color of it in a bunch of different variations. So you can have multiple different colors of that same chord with different extensions and stuff like that. If you know zero about music theory, this is the perfect tool for you because you can actually use your ears to pick the chord progression you want. Now in 4 bars, I want 4 chords. So I'm going to click this plus button and it'll give me up to 4 chords. So it evenly spaced along these 4 bars, so 1 chord per bar. And each one's obviously a C because it started that way. I can go in and I can grab that second one and I can change the root note to say an A minor just by hitting the arrow key on the root, and it's changed the shape a little bit because it has different intervals. And maybe we want to go to a 4 chord, which is the F. And then maybe I want to go to the G chord after that. Using my up arrow, I'm going to change that here, G. And so now let's hear it. It's outstandingly happy, but that's the great thing about this tool is you can experiment with different chords and shapes that you want. Maybe I want to go change that 4 chord to something else. Maybe I want to make it the 3rd, so I'm going to bring it down to E, and I'll hear it sounds. That might suit my purposes better. And I can make adjustments to the tonality of it, the coloration of it, but it's still going to be diatonic to that key of C major. And what this duration does is I can make them last. I can make individual ones last longer. So maybe I want to make this 3rd chord to come in earlier. I can actually adjust the offset earlier. I'm going to bring that down an 1/8 note. And so now it's going to come in an 1/8 note earlier. That's great, but now it overlaps with the 2nd chord. So you click on the 2nd chord and actually go in and reduce the duration of it. I'm going to use my down arrow key, and that brings that down. So I'm going to take this 3rd one. I want it to last that whole up to bar 4. So I'm going to go again, change that offset of the 3rd chord, or the duration, a little bit longer. So now this is what we call an anticipation in music. So now let's hear how it sounds. So that's how you can create these chord progressions. I'm going to show you I can do it in a musical context here in just a second. All right, time to put this all into a musical context. I have the guitar loop from the Postmodern Rock pack here, and I'm going to play this here for a second. I'm going to use my slice to MIDI function on this. I'm going to choose transients. So let's go over here, slice to MIDI track. And I'm going to choose transients and built-in slicing preset and hit OK. I'm going to turn this track off and here's a sliced version of it. So that sounds great. I'm going to copy this down here so I keep the original. Double click the 2nd one and I'm going to select all, delete all these notes, and I'm going to go into the stacks generator. So I'm going to go down here to my shape generator and select that. And now when I click on this regenerate button, it's going to create slices for this. I want to use the whole range of that guitar, all the way from the top to the bottom. And I'm just going to draw in some shape and hear how it sounds. Launch that clip. That sounds great. Let's increase the jitter to that so it's a little more random. Let's bring this up to about 50% or so. And bring the density down. I'm not going to mess with the tie. Let's bring the density down to about, say 45 or so. Now I can regenerate this, and this will regenerate the randomness of the tie, density, and jitter. I keep going until I find one that I like. All right, let's add a drum beat on top of that. Okay, now I'm going to use, I use the shape to generate kind of a randomness to that sound. Let's make it sound a little cooler. I'm going to add a couple effects to it. I'm just going to add a compressor across there and a delay. So I'm going to put the delay on there. And then a compressor. Probably put the compressor before the delay. And let's adjust this here. Ping pong. All right, that sounds pretty fun. All right, so let's add this glass harmonica to a MIDI track. I'm just going to drag over here and it'll create a new MIDI track for me. Get rid of these two audio tracks. I don't need those anymore. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click in here to create a new clip. Let's make it 4 bars long. And then I'm going to switch this to stacks. Got a total of 4 chords across there. And now this is where the scale awareness function is key. If I look up here, I can see that this original guitar part is in F sharp minor. So I'm going to change my key to F sharp minor. That way, when I create chords for it, they will match that. So again, this clip changes back to F minor, which is exactly what I want. And so now I'm going to pick the root note. I'm going to go over here and maybe go, it's an F sharp minor, not F minor, F sharp minor. And so now I'm going to go up here and I'm going to pick, let's go up to all the way up to like F sharp 3 for this first chord. Oh, perfect. And the second one, let's drop it down to say a D3. Hear that sound so far? All right, let's change that third chord, get in the same register. Maybe we'll make it A3 or A2. There we go. And make this bottom one an E3, I think. Yeah. That's a little too fast. I'm going to change my length to 8 bars. And I'm just going to click the regenerate button. And we'll fill out those 8 bars with those 4 chords. So now if I want to make a bass track, I'm going to create a new MIDI track. I'm going to copy that over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the top 2 notes. I'm just hit the zero, select the top 2 notes, hit their 0 key on my keyboard to temporarily mute those or permanently mute those. And I'm going to select all and bring them down 2 octaves, holding the shift key and hit the down arrow twice. That's going to bring them down 2 octaves. I'm going to use this bass line here, and let's hear how it sounds. Launch these all together. There you have it, a fun little composition that I used stacks to create the chord progression, and I matched that with a scale, F sharp, so I can see it's in the F sharp minor. I matched that, I just created a chord progression I liked with stacks. I took that chord progression, copied it over, muted the top 2 notes to create a bass line and brought it down 2 octaves, and there you have it. You have a fun little composition with all these different tools I showed you.